How many people do you think end up in the ER every day because of something they were cooking? Not because they were doing anything crazy, not because they were careless, but because the kitchen is the one place where danger hides inside routine. You're tired, you're hungry, you're moving fast on autopilot, and one normal habit, one shortcut you've done 1,000 times can turn into burns, falls, poisoning, or a life-threatening emergency before you even realize you're in trouble. Today we're counting down the 5 deadliest kitchen habits people do every day. For each one, I'll show you the exact moment it flips from harmless to dangerous, the chain of mistakes that keeps repeating, and one survival rule that breaks that chain before it breaks you. Let's begin. Number 5, powering through lightheadedness at the stove until your body cuts the power for you. It starts as the most normal scene in the world, stove on, pan warming. You're standing there stirring, relaxed, thinking about nothing but food. No knives flying, no oil splattering, no sense that anything bad is even possible. Just a routine moment you've lived through 1,000 times. And that's what makes this habit deadly. It doesn't look like a mistake, because the danger isn't cooking. The danger is the way people ignore the body's early warning signs when they're upright, focused, and close to hard surfaces and heat. Here's how it usually begins. You've been on your feet for a while. Maybe you skipped a meal. Maybe you didn't drink much water. Maybe you're coming down with something. Maybe you stood up quickly and walked straight to the stove. Maybe the room is warm. The burner is adding heat, and you're leaning forward without realizing you've been holding your breath in little bursts while you concentrate. Then your body sends a signal that's easy to dismiss, a sudden wave of dizziness. Not pain, just that hollow drop in your stomach, a quick sweat, ears ringing, vision tightening for a second like someone dimmed the lights. The kind of moment where you blink hard and tell yourself, "I'm fine." Freeze right there, because that is the decision point. Most people treat that feeling like an annoyance. They try to outlast it, they keep stirring, they reach for seasoning, they take one step to the sink, one step to the counter, one more second to finish what's in the pan, and that one more is where it goes wrong. Because when your brain isn't getting what it needs, whether it's from dehydration, low blood sugar, standing too long, heat, or your nervous system overreacting, your balance can fail before you fully understand it's failing. Your legs can feel normal right up until they don't. Your hands can be mid-motion, and then suddenly you're not in control of the motion anymore. So it doesn't look like a slow collapse. It looks like a switch. 1 second you're upright. The next second your body drops. Not gracefully, not carefully, just down, and kitchens are built to punish that. Hard floors don't give. Counter edges don't move. Cabinet corners don't forgive. A fall from standing height doesn't need drama to become catastrophic. It just needs the wrong angle. A head strike on tile or hardwood can split skin fast. Sometimes it's only a small amount of blood, but the injury underneath can be far more serious than it looks, especially if you are out for even a few seconds or you're confused when you come to. What makes this even worse is what's still happening in the background. The burner is still on. The pan is still heating. If something starts smoking, nobody is there to notice. If you're alone, there's no one to turn it off. If you're not alone, the sound of a body hitting the floor can easily get mistaken for a dropped pot lid or a cabinet slam. And if you don't immediately call out, if you're stunned, embarrassed, or you can't gather words, time starts doing what time always does. That's how a simple feint turns into a chain: head injury, delayed help, and a heat source still running while you're on the floor. So the survival rule for number 5 is simple, but it has to become automatic. The moment that warning wave hits, dizzy, sweaty, ears ringing, vision narrowing, treat it like an alarm, not a nuisance. Turn the burner off immediately, not after one more stir, immediately. Then get low on purpose, sit on a chair. If a chair isn't right there, sit on the floor. The floor is where you can't fall. And if it's more than a quick wobble, if you feel like you might black out, if it keeps happening, or if you wake up on the floor, don't shrug it off. Call someone, get checked. People talk themselves out of help because they feel silly. And then they pay for that silence later. Because the deadliest part of this habit isn't weakness, it's stubbornness. It's insisting you can finish the cooking before you listen to your body. And number 4 is even more common because it's the kitchen shortcut that feels harmless until it puts the wrong thing into your mouth without you ever seeing it happen. Number 4, rinsing raw chicken and spraying invisible contamination all over your kitchen. This one feels like a clean habit, A lot of people do it because they think they're being careful. They pull raw chicken out of the pack, walk to the sink, turn on the tap, and rinse it like it's common sense. The idea is simple. Wash off the slime, wash off the germs, make it safer before cooking. That instinct sounds logical. It's also exactly how kitchens get contaminated without anyone realizing it. Because when water hits raw chicken, it doesn't just hit the meat, it bounces. Tiny droplets splash off the surface and scatter outward onto the sink, the counter edge, the faucet handle, the dish rack, nearby utensils, your hands, and whatever happens to be within range. You don't see it because it isn't a dramatic mess, it's mist, a fine spray, the kind of thing that looks like nothing and dries like nothing. Freeze that moment, because this is where people get tricked. They rinse the chicken, set it down, and think, good, clean. Then they keep cooking. They touch the tap. They grab seasoning. They open the fridge. They wipe the counter with the same cloth they'll later use near plates. They rinse a cutting board. They toss salad greens into a bowl right beside the sink. They move through the kitchen like everything is still normal, and that's the danger. This habit creates contamination that behaves like it's not there. Foodborne illness doesn't usually announce itself in the kitchen. It announces itself hours later when the meal is over and the connection is gone. People wake up nauseous, stomach cramps, diarrhea, fever, weakness, sometimes vomiting so intense they can't keep water down. They blame something I ate, but they don't realize the culprit might have been the faucet handle they touched right after rinsing chicken, or the counter splash that landed near the dish towel. And it can hit more than one person at once, which is why it's so dangerous in a household. One clean habit can turn into multiple sick people overnight. Emergency responders and clinicians hear the same line over and over. We didn't eat anything weird. That's the trap. It wasn't weird. It was normal kitchen routine, just contaminated in a way nobody could see. What makes this especially nasty is that people often create the perfect conditions for spread without meaning to. They rinse chicken, then rinse their hands quickly, thinking that's enough. But then they turn the tap off with the same hand that turned it on. Now the handle is dirty. Then they wash their hands again and touch the handle again. Then they wipe it with a dishcloth. And that dishcloth becomes the delivery system for everything it touches after. And because it's chicken, people tend to prep other ready-to-eat foods, nearby salads, fruits, bread, garnish things that won't be cooked at all. So now the contamination isn't heading into a hot pan where heat can destroy it, it's heading straight to the plate. The scariest part is that the kitchen can look spotless while this is happening. You can't see bacteria, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, so the brain assumes safety. It assumes the rinse did something helpful, but the rinse doesn't make raw chicken safer. Cooking does. Heat does. The rinse just spreads risk into places you will touch later without thinking. So here's the survival rule for number 4, and it's incredibly simple. Don't rinse raw chicken, pat it dry with paper towels if you need to remove moisture, and throw the towels away immediately. Keep raw meat contained on one cutting board. Wash hands thoroughly after handling it. And then this part matters: clean and disinfect the sink and faucet area like they were part of the raw meat prep, because they were. And if you want one habit that stops most cross-contamination, make this your trigger. The moment raw chicken touches your hands, everything you touch after is dirty until you've washed properly. No seasoning jars, no fridge handle, no phone, no towel, because the deadliest kitchen habits aren't always dramatic. Sometimes they're the ones that feel like hygiene, while they quietly turn your entire sink area into the starting point of an outbreak. And number 3 is worse because it doesn't just make people sick for a day. It's the habit that can turn dinner into a medical emergency in minutes right at the table. Number 3, eating too fast and turning one normal bite into a silent choking emergency. This one doesn't feel like a kitchen habit, but it is, because the kitchen is where it starts. You're hungry, you've been busy. The food finally hits the table and you're already halfway standing, halfway chewing, halfway talking. You take a big bite because you're rushing. You swallow too early because you don't want to be the slow one. Maybe you laugh mid-bite. Maybe you take a sip at the wrong time. Maybe you're tasting while cooking, grabbing quick mouthfuls between stirring and plating. It all feels harmless until the bite goes down the wrong way. And when choking happens, it often doesn't look like the movies. It's not always loud. It's not always dramatic. It's not always someone waving their arms and making a scene. Sometimes it's the opposite. A person suddenly goes quiet. Their face changes. Their eyes widen. They stand up like they're about to do something, and then they can't. Because the airway isn't like a straw you can push through. If food blocks it, there's no air moving. And when there's no air moving, there's no sound, no shouting, no calling for help. Just a silent, panicked struggle that people nearby misread for a second too long. That hesitation is deadly. People think, "Are you okay?" They wait for an answer. They assume the person is coughing. They assume they can swallow it down. They assume it will pass. But if it's a true airway blockage, time is everything. The brain can only go so long without oxygen before the body starts shutting down. This is why emergency responders describe the same pattern. By the time everyone realizes it's choking, the person is already weakening. They're already less able to help themselves, and the longer it goes, the harder it becomes to fix. The habit that feeds this is simple. People eat like they're in a race. They take big bites. They talk while chewing. They eat while distracted watching something, scrolling, standing at the counter. They rush tough foods. They don't sit fully. They don't chew fully. And for some people, swallowing is already less forgiving than it used to be. Dry mouth, dentures, medications that affect saliva, reflux, or just a swallow reflex that isn't as sharp as it once was. But you don't need a diagnosis for choking. You just need one badly timed bite. Certain foods make the risk worse because they form plugs. Meat that isn't cut small, bread that clumps, sticky foods that don't break easily, hard round foods that can seal the airway like a cap. And the danger spikes when someone tries to wash it down with a drink because liquid can make a blockage shift in the worst way or trigger more panic swallowing. What makes this so brutal is how normal it feels right before it happens. You don't feel like you're doing something dangerous, you feel like you're eating. So here's the survival rule for number 3, and it's a simple chain breaker. First, slow the first bites. The first bites are where people rush the most. Cut food smaller than you think you need to. Chew until it's truly broken down. Don't talk while you're still chewing. Sit down to eat instead of hovering at the counter like you're just grabbing something quick. Second, learn the one signal that matters. If someone cannot speak, cannot cough, or is suddenly silent with a panicked face, don't wait for confirmation. That is your cue to act immediately. Asking "Are you okay?" wastes the exact seconds you don't have. And third, don't let pride delay help. People who are choking often try to walk away to handle it privately. That's how they collapse out of sight. If it looks wrong, treat it like it's real and get help fast. Because the deadliest kitchen emergencies aren't always fire and knives. Sometimes it's one normal bite, taken too fast, that turns the entire room into a race against oxygen. And number 2 is even more deceptive because it isn't a sudden emergency at all. It's a quiet daily mistake that can poison a whole household without anyone realizing where it started. Number 2, using the same multi-purpose sponge or cloth for everything and spreading germs like you're painting the kitchen. This is one of the most common kitchen habits on earth, and it feels like cleanliness. You wipe the counter, you wipe the stove, you wipe a small spill, you wipe the cutting board, you wipe the table, you wipe your hands, maybe you even wipe a plate real quick because it looks dusty. It's one sponge, one cloth, one towel that lives by the sink and handles everything. And because the kitchen looks cleaner afterward, your brain marks it as safe. But here's what that sponge really is: a wet, warm storage unit for whatever you just picked up. It's damp, it's porous, it holds food residue, it sits at room temperature. And every time you use it, you're not just removing mess, you're moving microbes from one surface to another like you're spreading invisible ink. Pause on the part most people don't think about. When you wipe a surface, you assume you've cleaned it. But a cloth doesn't automatically kill anything. If it's contaminated, it acts like a stamp. It picks up bacteria from one place and deposits them on the next place you wipe, and the next, and the next. That's how one small mess turns into a kitchen-wide problem. It often starts with something tiny: raw meat juice on a cutting board, a drip on the counter, residue on the sink edge. You wipe it up, great. Then you use that same sponge on the faucet handle. Now the faucet handle is contaminated. Then you wash your hands, touch the faucet again, and contaminate your clean hands. Then you open the fridge, then you grab vegetables, then you touch a plate. Now it's not just the cutting board, it's everything. The scariest part is that nothing looks wrong. There's no smell, no color, no obvious stain. Everything looks clean, which means you don't trigger caution. You keep living normally. And foodborne illness loves that kind of confidence because symptoms show up later, hours later, sometimes the next day. Nausea, stomach cramps, diarrhea, fever, weakness. People blame a restaurant, a bad ingredient, or maybe something I ate, but they don't think about the sponge they used all day that quietly moved contamination from the sink to the counter to the plate. And this can hit whole households at once because everyone touched the same kitchen, everyone ate food prepared on the same surfaces, everyone used the same clean towel hanging near the sink that wasn't actually clean anymore. Clinicians hear the same story constantly: we were all fine, and then we weren't. Now here's where the habit becomes genuinely dangerous. People treat sponges like permanent tools. They keep them for weeks, sometimes months. They rinse them, squeeze them, and put them back in the same damp spot to sit and grow whatever they just fed it. They use the same cloth to wipe raw meat messes and then wipe the dining table where kids put their hands. They wipe the counter and then wipe their phone screen. They wipe the sink and then wipe a cup. It isn't just gross, it's a system that spreads risk. So here's the survival rule for number 2, and it's one of the easiest fixes in the whole video. Stop using one sponge for everything. Separate the jobs: one cloth for countertops and eating areas, another for the sink and dirty zones. And never use a dish towel as a hand towel and a cleaning towel at the same time. Replace sponges often and keep them dry between uses because moisture is what turns them into a breeding ground. And when you wipe up anything from raw meat, treat the cloth like it's contaminated until it's been properly cleaned or thrown out. Because the kitchen doesn't get people sick only from bad food. Sometimes it's the cleaning tool you trust, quietly turning your entire kitchen into a transfer station. And number 1 is the habit people defend the hardest because it feels normal. But it's exactly how the most dangerous kitchen accidents begin. Number 1. Leaving a pan handle sticking out and giving one accident the perfect lever to break bones, burn skin, or end a life. This is the habit people don't even notice they're doing. You're cooking and the pan ends up with the handle facing outward toward the edge of the stove, toward the walkway, toward the part of the kitchen where people pass behind you. It feels harmless because it's so common. Handles stick out. That's what handles do until something bumps it. A hip brushing past, a sleeve catching it, a bag strap swinging, a child reaching up, a pet weaving between legs, or you turning too fast with a plate in your hand and clipping the handle without even realizing you did it. And that's when the kitchen turns violent. Because the handle isn't just a handle, it's a lever, a long metal lever attached to a heavy, hot object. A light bump at the end becomes a big force at the pan. It tips, slides, or flips faster than your brain can react. And whatever is inside follows physics, not intentions. This is why these accidents feel like they happen in a blink. You don't get time to choose a smart response. You don't get a calm second to step back. The first moment you realize something is wrong is usually the same moment the hot food is already moving toward you. Then comes the second mistake instinct. Instinct tells people to catch it. Your hands shoot out. You grab for the pan. You grab for the handle. You try to save the meal. You try to stop the spill. And in that split second, you forget the most important detail. The thing you're grabbing is hot, heavy, and moving. So now you're not just dealing with a spill, you're dealing with burns, impact, and panic at the same time. Hot liquids and oils are especially dangerous because they cling. They don't just splash and disappear, they stick to skin and keep cooking it. A pot of boiling water, a pan of oil, thick soup, stew, those don't cool fast enough to shake off. They can cause deep burns in seconds. And burns don't have to cover your whole body to become life-changing. A burn across the hand can destroy grip strength for months. A burn on the face can damage eyes. A burn on the torso can lead to shock if it's severe enough. Even smaller burns can become dangerous if the person is very young, older, or already medically fragile. But it's not only burns. When a heavy pan flips, it can strike someone like a blunt weapon. It can hit the forearm, the wrist, the shin, the head. People stumble backward trying to escape the spill and fall into counters or onto hard floors. And if a person slips while holding something sharp like a knife they were using seconds earlier, now the accident multiplies. This is why the handle out habit belongs at number 1. It creates a perfect chain reaction. A tiny bump triggers a heavy object to move. Panic triggers bad reflexes, and the kitchen's hard surfaces finish the job. And what makes it so common is that everyone thinks it won't happen to them. They've done it 1,000 times, they've never had a problem. So the brain marks it as safe. That's exactly how the kitchen gets you. It waits for the 1,001st. So here's the survival rule for number 1. And it's so simple it almost feels silly until you realize how many injuries it prevents. Whenever you put a pan on the stove, make handle in automatic. Turn it inward, away from the edge, away from the walkway. If you have multiple burners on, position handles so none of them create a line a sleeve can hook. And don't leave utensils where they can snag handles when you move fast. Then add the second rule that saves you when something does go wrong. If a pan starts to tip, do not try to catch the contents midair. Step back first. Protect your face and eyes. Let the pan fall if it has to. A broken dish can be replaced. Skin can't. Because the deadliest kitchen habit isn't the dramatic one. It's the invisible setup you repeat every day until one small bump turns your kitchen into a place you'll never feel safe in again. Before you go, don't try to remember all 5. Pick one habit from this list and change it today, because the kitchen doesn't punish people for being reckless. It punishes them for being comfortable. Now, I want to hear from you. Which habit are you most guilty of handles sticking out? The all-purpose sponge, eating too fast, rinsing chicken, or ignoring dizziness? And if you've ever had a close call in the kitchen, what happened? Your story might stop someone else from repeating it. If you want more everyday habits exposed with the real chain of mistakes and the one rule that breaks it, like this video and subscribe, because the next countdown is the 5 deadliest shower habits people above 60 do daily. And number 1 is something people do on autopilot right before the bathroom turns unforgiving.